Good morning.
Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
It goes.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be seen and not viewed. That's my motto.
Yeah.
Have we went live yet?
Yes, we are live.
Oh, I got a question for you after this.
Okay. Well, when we go off streaming, you can ask. It's good. It is good to see you. We've made progress on our house in Huntsville.
Oh,
So
great.
we actually have are beginning to have floors now. So
That's what's up.
it helps to have a place to stand.
Yeah, there's something about habitation that we all kind of like need.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's been going on with you recently?
Finals and projects.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah.
How are finals
I,
going?
it's going. I just did an extra. I missed one assignment. I just didn't understand what my teacher wanted me to do. It was like a temp one assignment.
Hmm.
And I was like, screw it. Let me just do this summation of a seminar for 20 points extra credit. Like, I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
not doing that.
Right.
And so one of my classes, I'm not sure if I have a final in or not. My other class, I turned in. My teacher actually let us, if we could turn in our final project before December 1st. She was going to pre-grade it because it's not due to the 13th, and that way
Oh,
we could make changes to it if need be.
right.
My other class, we uh I think I've done everything in that class. No, no, no. That's the question I got. So I got a
Okay.
class that the assignment for the final assignment is to create a nonprofit and write a
Oh,
grant.
wow. Yeah. Hmm.
I don't think I should have to do that.
You've been doing that for
I know, but it's so knowing what the project is, you know what my question to you is.
no, I can't. You got you have me on the edge of my seat. What's your question?
I'm gonna text you.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I'll plug my ears.
Oh,
It's
hey,
not.
Paula.
I ain't
Hey,
worried. You're not the problem, sis. You are not the problem.
Yeah, yeah, we're putting this out there. There's a record, so we have to be careful. Mm.
How you doing, Paula?
I'm okay.
You're
I,
back home.
am home and I'm doing something I never thought I would do. I finally went to an acupuncture doctor to help with my
Oh.
back
Oh,
pain,
I
Hmm.
did
and
that when I was going through my cancer treatment.
it helped so much. I'm not out of pain, but it's
Hmm.
down at least 60%. And
Wow.
Dave, you have sinus problems, don't you?
I do.
I
Hmm.
went in one day and I was all stopped up and I told him, I don't have COVID. I've taken a test. It's just my normal sinus problems. And
Hmm.
he said, I fix. And he stuck three more needles in me. And
Hmm.
my sinuses, and he said, breathe deep for 5 minutes. And my
Hmm.
sinuses cleared up and have been cleared for 6 weeks now.
Oh my gosh.
It,
Wow.
I told him he was a miracle worker.
Yeah, yeah.
Paula, Paula, how much of that do you think is like just our minds making our bodies
I
do it
don't think
easier?
it's our minds because I was trying to get out of there after I walked in. I kept thinking of an excuse to have to leave. I did not want to do
Yeah, there's some good
it.
research on acupuncture. I mean, is this people have had centuries of experimenting with this stuff. There's some good research on acupuncture.
Well, well, there's the acupuncture that they do at UAB,
Hmm.
but this is a doctor who has a Chinese acupuncture
There you go.
Okay.
Get the real
Yeah.
deal.
and it's a little different
Uh-huh.
from the medical kind, but it was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Dave, check your text message.
Very cool. I will.
Okay,
Hmm.
he's gonna laugh now. Hey Miller.
Good morning.
And look, I may be like on and off camera doing certain things because
Okay.
I got to try to get ready. I got to go to Montgomery today.
Oh wow.
So I'm gonna be kind of multitasking.
Yeah.
Rob's taking a rest break today, so it's just me.
And we all do that. So, gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay.
After this week, a
I'll
rest
I'll
break
talk
is
to you more
good.
about that Tony, once we go offline. Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk to you more about that after we go offline. But
My other thing is just paraphrasing. Like makes no sense to me.
no, I get it. I get it. And
Come on.
especially, I mean, you run into that a lot when you're a return to school student. That there's some stuff that we'll talk more. All right. So, Miller, is Rob going to be on, or are we it today?
That's it.
That's it.
I
Yeah, he's
missed.
taking a rest break. It's
Okay.
fine.
No, it's all good. Well, all right. So let's do it this way. Let's do so I wasn't, oh man, I wasn't crazy about the lectionary passages, which I've shared with you all. The next from last week, I think there's 3 Sundays in Advent that it's all about the end times prophecies. And so it's eschatology, right? And so this is a little bit like in the summer when you have 6 straight weeks of Jesus is the bread of life, and I'm getting a little tired of it, frankly. This is like, 3 weeks of end times. I get a little tired of it. But we're in week 2, and this is partially this is a discipline. I like to follow the lectionary. I like to follow a lectionary so I'm not just picking and choosing scriptures that I like. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and do this. Let's see. Uh Tony, can you be the liturgist? And Paula, if you will be voice of the people. And then Miller, if you will take the gospel reading,
Sure.
I will do the Hebrew Bible reading. Does that sound good? All right. Let me get the liturgy up on the screen. Excuse me. Make sure it's the right week. There we go. All right. So again, apologies in advance for typos, because I didn't have a chance to preview all of it. So go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. Today in 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery bus. This became the event that launched the Montgomery bus boycott. Today also marks World AIDS Day, first established in 1988 by the United Nations. It was intended to raise awareness of HIV infection and memorialize those who have died in the epidemic. Today is the feast of St. Charles de Foucauld, priest and missionary to the Tuareg people of Algeria. His friendship with Muslims there was highlighted by his devotion to preach not with words, but with actions. He was martyred on this day in 1916 by bandits. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Hear these words of the invitation.
The hospitality of God knows no bounds.
The love of God is immeasurable.
The generosity of God is beyond our wildest dreams.
We gather today as invited ones,
As beloved ones,
as blessed ones.
draw near and let us break the bread of life.
Today's responsive reading comes from Psalms 25 from the Common English Version. I offer my life to you, Lord. My God, I trust you.
Please don't let me be put to shame. Don't let my enemies rejoice over me.
For that matter, don't let anyone who hopes in you be put to shame.
Instead, let those who are treacherous without excuse be put to shame.
Make your ways known to me, Lord. Teach me your paths.
Lead me in your truth. Teach it to me because you are the God who saves me.
I put my hope in you all day long.
Lord, remember your compassion and faithful love. They are forever.
But don't remember the sin of my youth or my wrongdoing.
Remember me only according to your faithful love for the sake of your goodness, Lord.
The Lord is good and does the right thing. He teaches sinners which way they should go.
God guides the weak to justice, teaching them his way.
All the Lord's paths are loving and faithful.
For those who keep his covenants and laws.
The Hebrew Bible reading today is from Jeremiah 33:14 through 26. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill my gracious promise with the people of Israel and Judah. In those days and at that time, I will raise up a righteous branch from David's line, who will do what is just and right in the land. In those days, Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will live in safety, and this is what he will be called: The Lord is our righteousness.
Today's gospel reading comes from Luke 21:25-36. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth there will be dismay among nations in their confusion over the roaring of the sea and surging waves. The planets and other heavenly bodies will be shaken, causing people to faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world. Then they will see the human one coming on a cloud with power and great splendor. Now, when these things begin to happen, stand up straight and raise your heads, because your redemption is near. Jesus told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, you know that God's kingdom is near. I assure you that this generation won't pass away until everything's happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will certainly not pass away. Take care that your hearts aren't dulled by drinking parties, drunkenness, and the anxieties of day-to-day life. Don't let that day fall upon you unexpectedly, like a trap. It will come upon everyone who lives on the face of the whole earth. Stay alert at all times, praying that you are strong enough to escape everything that is about to happen and to stand before the human one. May God bless the hearing of this word.
Thanks
Thanks
be to
be
God.
to God.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Paula.
Oh, I thought I was bold.
No,
Okay.
you were. I was about to say it. The reflection. Charles de Foucauld wrote, "I no longer want a monastery which is too secure. I want a small monastery, like the house of a poor workman who is not sure tomorrow he will find work or bread, who with all his being shares the suffering of the world."
So thank you for getting us started with worship. And thanks to those of you who are tuning in on Facebook or YouTube. If you're on one of our streams, thanks for participating in worship with us. If you want to leave a comment, just where you're watching from, or in a minute, if you want to lift up a prayer request, go ahead and do that. That gives us a way to count you that you're here with us today. I'll get us started as we go into a time of prayer, and those of you who have prayer requests in a minute can feel free to put them in the comments or in the chat. I'll keep an eye on YouTube. Would
I
someone keep
got
an eye on
Facebook.
Facebook? Thank you, sir. Let's go to God in prayer. Gracious God, it's very easy for us to want to escape the trials of the world. And yet so often, God, the mystics and the saints and those who went before us go towards suffering and not away from it. We're reminded of the words of Mr. Rogers that in times of tragedy, we should look for the helpers. Help us, God, to be those helpers, to be the hands and feet of your grace, working healing and redemption on the world. We thank you for every sign of hope around us. We thank you even as we go into this darkest time of the year that we see evidence already of new life, of things being born, incubated, kept secret in darkness until it's time to be revealed. God, we long for the revealing of more humaneness, more kindness. Help us to see a world that is closer to your kingdom and further away from empire, domination, fascism, cruelness, and all the isms that separate human beings. We give you thanks for the love of your Son, Jesus Christ, and for the celebration of his birth as we approach Christmas. And we lift up to you the needs of our hearts, the things that are close to us, and invite those of you who are listening to share.
For Ernie Failer and his family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For caregivers.
Lord,
Lord,
hear our
hear.
prayer. Thanksgiving for family time this week.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Deidre Hand.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Gaza.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those we lost to the HIV epidemic.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Gratitude for us who are still here fighting.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For transgender young people and adults.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the safety of those traveling.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those with chronic illnesses.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the people of Ukraine.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Gracious God, for all those that we've named and for the prayers of our hearts that we don't know how to put into words, we give you thanks that you hear and that you answer. Excuse me. And we join we join the word, we join together praying the words of Christ who taught us this prayer. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your reign come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil, for yours is the sovereignty, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. So as I was sharing at the beginning when we got started, uh, in the lectionary, this time of Advent, as we're building up to Christmas, for 3 weeks, we get stories of the end times, of the eschaton. And I shared last week that the modern era, we have a particular take on the so-called end times, because we have so many movies about like the zombie apocalypse or meteors hitting the world, or you know, probably we should have had a lot more things like climate catastrophe, although there is some of that too. Um, different ways for the world to end. I've seen the world end probably 50, 60 different times, from alien invasions to asteroids to human stupidity, to nuclear war. I mean, we are able to envision all these different ways of the world ending. And it wasn't unusual. Like, this is not a new thing. This goes back thousands of years, as you heard today. Signs in the sun and moon and stars, the heavens would be shaken. In other words, for the people of the ancient world, the dome of the heavens, like, think about the heavens shaking, right? The idea is all of reality is somehow compromised. And all of this is about revealing something. The word apocalypse means to uncover or to reveal. So if you think about, you're sitting in the audience for a play, and the curtain parts and you first see the set, right? That's the picture that apocalypse is supposed to be. Like, all this is prelude, is the idea. And now the curtain's open and now we see what's really going on, right? We see the forces that are actually moving in our world. It's a little bit like, if you think about, I mean, I guess the closest thing I can think of would be a scientific discovery, like a grand unification theory, or something that explains all the physical forces that we have. This is something that scientists are questing for, right? They want to find a unified theory of how the world works. So all our physical laws are tied together. That's the eschaton. That's what's revealed. That's what's shown to us. And the idea in scripture is that this is coming. There's a day that's coming when things are going to be revealed, right? And so that's why when you read a book called Revelation, or when you read Apocalypse in the Bible, things like in Daniel in the Old Testament, or Revelation in the New Testament, or these words of Jesus, there's this kind of cosmic language of disruption. That's all that Revelation and Apocalypse means. It doesn't mean the end of things. It doesn't mean the world is ending and everyone's going to die and civilization is over. It means that there's a new reality that's being shown or revealed. That's what apocalypse means. And it's interesting what Jesus does in this passage. I mean, I think a lot of times we focus, when we hear words of apocalypse, of Revelation, we focus on stuff like this: the sun and the moon and the stars showing signs. On earth, dismay among nations over the roaring of the seas and the surging waves. The planets and other heavenly bodies being shaken. That's the language we're used to. In the middle of this sermon, in the middle of this vision that Jesus is giving us, he drops this. Look at the fig tree and all the other trees. When they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. This metaphor that Jesus is using, suddenly in the middle of what sounds like, and by the way, death and destruction aren't actually in this passage. It's signs, it's shaking, it's fear. But what's actually happening is blossoming, is growth, blooming. I think this is part of what Jesus is after. He gives us the language we're used to when we're talking about the end times, signs and portents and cosmic stuff. And then he says, look at the fig tree. Fig tree. And here's the thing, like if you're not someone who knows a lot about plants and you've never actually watched a fig tree, I need to tell you, it's a unique kind of plant. It's having planted fig trees and watched them grow. I actually, we planted some on some property we have in Huntsville, and I thought this year that they were dead. Like when I went up in April and I looked to see, they were just bare sticks. And the thing with fig trees is they have this white sap in them. And so you can look at the branch, and if there's no sap in it, it just breaks off. It's very brittle, comes apart. If it's still got a little flex in it, there's some sap in there. And I looked at these fig plants, and so many of the stems were just brittle. They were dead, and they snapped off. We had a hard freeze earlier in the spring, and I thought, well, shucks, they're all gone. Now, the thing with fig trees is the sap gradually moves up the stem, and what happens, and it kind of grows from the bottom up. That's part of what's cool about it. And so you're watching this plant that's all dead on the bottom, and then you see these tiny little green buds on the stem. And then the next day you've got a leaf that's the size of your hand. I mean, it feels like that. It's like boom. And fig trees are they're just a beautiful sign of spring, of summer coming. And they can be late bloomers, like these trees that we planted. I thought they were dead. I really did. And then when I went back a couple of weeks later, they were covered with leaves. Again, big leaves. Fig leaves are these, I mean, they are the size of your hand, kind of 3 lobes. You've probably heard about, Adam and Eve making clothes out of fig leaves, which were very scratchy, very uncomfortable against your tender areas. The idea is that figs are this sign of abundance. And so Jesus uses this metaphor, not of blood and plagues and horsemen and death and war and earthquakes, but of something growing. I think the challenge for Christians is to hold those two images together. To hold those two images, that like in the midst of chaos and kind of global uncertainty, world-changing events, to think instead about something new being born, about something growing. And that's kind of the paradox of anything when you begin to study life, that life grows out of, well, fertilizer, poop, stuff that's not attractive. Life grows out of death. And the focus for Jesus here is on something being revealed, something being born. And I think that's why these verses are in there today as we kick off Advent, the 4 weeks before Christmas. The idea of something being born is the whole message of Advent and Christmas. That during the darkest point of the year, we're looking for birth. During the darkest part of the year, we're looking for life. Now, Jesus gets to the end of this passage, and I think it's also interesting what he says. It's easy, I think, to blast past this. And the way it's translated in the Common English Bible is, take care that your hearts aren't dulled. Your hearts, your feelings, your emotions. Take care that your feelings aren't dulled by drinking parties, drunkenness, two references to being kind of inebriated, and the anxieties of day-to-day life. It's this isn't just about bacchanalian revelry. This isn't just like, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This is talking about your feelings being dulled, your emotions being dulled. And by the way, when we talk about like addiction, or we talk about real substance use problems, that's part of what's going on. Someone's hurt and they're self-medicating. They're trying to numb something, right? And the idea, Jesus says, don't be numbed here. And I don't necessarily think he's talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, bacchanalian parties. Like the idea, and maybe there's some of that. Oh, the end times are coming. Let's live it up. Let's party, since tomorrow we're going to die. I think it's more about, don't numb yourself to what's going on, and don't be numbed by worries about day-to-day stuff. And he says this elsewhere in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount, by what we shall wear or what we're going to eat, the worries about the future. He says, kind of have a stay awake, be aware that something is growing among us. Don't numb yourself to this. And I think there's so much doomerism in our culture right now, whether that's about climate or politics or society, as though humanity has not lived through crises before. But I think the focus here is not like, oh, is this the one? Is this the event that's going to wipe us all out? Is this the end of all things that are important and valuable in the world? I think the idea is, Jesus is saying, don't numb yourself to what's going on, right? Be aware something is being born. And I think Jesus is redirecting us toward the stuff that is being born in the midst of the chaos, which I think is a good way to start the Christmas season. So, thoughts, responses?
I think.
I remember. Go ahead, Miller.
Sorry. Yeah. Like, as someone who has some trauma, related to apocalyptic thinking and big charts about blood moons and stuff, from TV preachers,
Yeah.
and literally thinking that at any moment it could just be over and I wouldn't get to live my life,
Mm-hmm.
I really want to think about this as Jesus telling us to watch out for our own personal apocalypse,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I've had them,
Mm-hmm.
these moments where all of a sudden you look around and you do see the stars differently. You see everything differently because you're suddenly realizing how it all works, You're looking around you and you're saying, oh, that's what empire is. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's who's in charge here. That's why, the government is the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
And especially, with Jesus talking so much against the Roman government. I also think that we have to look at that language that he used, which is seeing the kingdom on earth.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly how he says it, but we talk about that. bringing the kingdom to earth isn't just like some big piece of land coming down from the sky. It's
Yeah.
it's what we're all doing. It's our efforts,
Mhm.
and it exists now. Like you can
Mhm.
look around and see the kingdom, like people, you know, looking around and seeing what people need around you and how you can
Mhm.
fill those needs, you know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I really prefer this reading of that rather than like some time is coming when things are going to be dangerous, and I think that's very distracting,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
no, I appreciate that. I think what you're sort of I've suddenly forgotten the phrase. When we're talking about the kingdom, it's already but not yet. Realized eschatology, so like it's happening now. It's already happened, and it's an ongoing thing. Because he says, I assure you, this generation won't pass away until all these things have happened. And then he says in the very next line, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words won't pass away. I mean, the idea is it's like this really ambiguous time. Like this generation won't pass away before all these things happen. Um, and by the way, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will continue. So, like that's a big span.
Like it really feels like he's saying, you guys are going to get it. It
Yeah.
won't take, it won't take forever.
Hmm.
Before you die, you will be like, oh, that's what he meant. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that's a good way of putting it. Exactly. Because this is about this is the revelation is that, oh, this is the end of things, right? This is the end being both the terminus and the goal, right? Oh, that's what this means. Yeah, totally.
I was
Yeah.
gonna
Other
say,
thoughts?
I keep remembering we were still meeting in person, and we were at your house over in Avenue, and it was like before the world went crazy. I
Yeah.
distinctly remember you saying like you feel like something is being birthed.
Hmm.
And it may have been around the same time of Advent, but I think that when things start to change in our lives, sometimes we almost want them to be apocalyptic in the
Hmm.
negative sense. So like everything's
Hmm.
gonna be destroyed but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Like it's all about how you interpret what you're seeing, and we
Hmm.
can all control that. Like out in this, and this is so prescient to me right now because I'm going through that right now personally. Like there's a lot of things that are going on, and I'm not afraid of them. I just like everybody else. I don't like change.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't. But also, it's almost like you were talking about the fig trees earlier. Like one of the things we have to do with trees is prune them.
Hmm.
So sometimes your mini apocalypse comes with things that you have to let go. And
Hmm.
like most people, I don't like letting go things. You
Yeah.
know, and I really like this interpretation of it because I don't like the whole live right now or you're gonna die type of way of scaring people into doing what you say God says. Like if it's really good, it's really
Hmm.
important, people are gonna do it because you made it seem that way. But like trying to scare people into doing what we think they should be doing is never worked for me, and I don't think it ever will.
Right. Yeah. Well, I like the way you put mini apocalypse, right? And I think that's like we all go through that. At some point in your life, you're gonna have a mini apocalypse, and that may be someone dying, it may be a big change in your life, it may be any number of things. And as you said, I think we all fear change, but that's like, and I hate this, so sounds so cliche. That is literally part of life. Like life has changed. I love Octavia Butler in her sci-fi series talks about God is change. That God is this dynamic force of life that's always on the move. Um, and I think sometimes we do experience that as like, oh, this is a little apocalypse, and that's often where we find God. I
And
I want to go ahead.
I think my other thing with that is like we experience these mini apocalypse,
Hmm.
and sometimes you think it's over, like oh that was the last one,
Hmm.
and then there's something else that comes up like crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, when is this gonna stop?
Yeah. There's always something else going on. I want to tag on something else you said real quick, which is that you know a lot of the hellfire and brimstone, like you could die at any moment, preachers. Yes, that gets on my nerves. It's also so true. But I like I could die tomorrow. And that's part of the thing. Like there's an urgency to stuff that I don't want to jettison,
But
right?
you're not gonna die tomorrow because you didn't do what they said. Like that's the
Right.
point.
Right. And it's more of a hopeful like I want to die tomorrow feeling like I had a good life
Right.
and I'm grateful. Anyway, Paul, if you had your hand up for a minute, I'll shut up so
Uh,
you can talk.
oh, no problem. Couple of things. I'm fighting my feelings being numbed ever since I
Mm.
think November the 6th.
Yeah.
I'm a news junkie. Back when there were actually things called newspapers,
Hmm.
I didn't go through a day without reading the newspaper. And now online, I get three different newspapers I can read.
Hmm.
And I pulled up, I think it was either the New York Times or the Washington Post this morning, and everything in it about cabinet appointees
Hmm.
had me wanting to just give up.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people right there now. And
Hmm.
it's important to be reminded that this is a struggle that we all go through and that
Hmm.
we can fight it.
Hmm.
Uh, and then, second, last week or maybe week before last on Facebook, I posted a quote by Rob Bell, and it was a longer quote, but the gist of it was the main purpose of the Bible isn't to tell you how to get into heaven, it's to teach you to bring heaven to earth.
Hmm.
To, two of the sweetest, kindest, most loving people I have ever known in my life. And I have known both of them. Well, one of them since I was born, and one of them since high school, absolutely attacked me. That basically, if I didn't believe that the reason that we have the Bible
Mm.
was to teach us to get to heaven, then I didn't know what it meant to be a Christian.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that breaks my heart that they can't see past that one goal
Hmm.
that has been pounded into our heads. In the Baptist church growing up, there was that question: if you died tonight, do you know where you would go?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved your face, Miller. Um,
Hmm.
uh, and when it's pounded in you, when you're, from the time you're born,
Hmm.
it's hard to shake.
Hmm.
Uh, and you even find times doubting yourself. But just to not even see past that,
Yeah.
even a little bit, is heartbreaking.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the main distortion that's happened to Christianity is to place it into uh an afterlife. The goal is managing sin so you can attain the afterlife.
Pie in the sky
Um,
by and by.
yeah, instead of a way of life that you embody. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Miller, you have your hand up also.
Yeah. I wanted to read Liz's comment just because I
Hmm.
like how she put this. Um, the idea of revelations and doomsday talk as revealing versus death, which, as you're saying, is a different kind of death, death
Hmm.
of the person you were, is completely new and mind blowing for me. Very,
Hmm.
very comforting in these difficult times. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I think of, I don't know, yeah, like I said, there was a time when I was, a child, a teenager,
Hmm.
thinking, what if I don't get to be an adult,
Hmm.
And I mean, it also kind of makes me think of like, queer people who think, they're not going to see adulthood,
Right.
because that's a common thing,
Hmm.
and they can't really picture themselves as grown up.
Hmm.
Um, so like sort of throwing away that interpretation and acknowledging that, like, death and change can just be, you know, this perspective thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. I yeah. It doesn't have to be, I don't know. And it strikes me as very capitalistic, what you were saying about, like, just sort of managing your sin balance,
Hmm.
in
Oh,
order to like just have enough goodness to like make it through to the end. It's like
totally. No, I think totally. And yeah, yes. I mean, there's so much that ties into that the distorted Christianity ties into our capitalist way of thinking, which is, I mean, the idea of carrot and stick. I mean, of of the market of scarcity, as opposed to this idea that there's so much abundance that heaven is overflowing. There's so much heaven that's overflowing. It's overflowing into this current reality right now, and there's more than enough to share. Is just such a different perspective. I also kind of want to go back to what you said. I mean, I do feel like, and Paul, kind of as you said, this isn't pie in the sky by and by. The idea of Christianity being a way of life. I mean, Jesus called himself the way. You're following my way. That reshapes the world, reshapes your perspective on things. Instead of I'm biding my time to escape, to hit the eject button, get out of this awful place. Um, so not only so I can avoid hell, but this place is really lousy too. My goal is to get out there. Um, and that's so different than what we say we believe about Jesus's incarnation. God so loved the world that God gave God's only son, that the idea is like, I know I'm running into this burning building to save as many people as I can, because it's really not a bad place. It's a really great place to love the world like that. Anyway, I'll shut up. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tony.
That was deep, Miller. And I'm also thinking like, is that the problem with like the right wing conservative version of Christianity, in which like this world really doesn't matter because all they're trying to do is get to the next place, but in doing that, you forsake all the things that Christ has told you to do while you're here. Like we're trying to make sure we follow all these rules so we can get to heaven because this rule is it's a whole legalistic view of what religion should be, and in that process, you are totally like forgetting the context that any of this stuff was taught to you. You're not doing any of the work, and at the end of the day, you're making life miserable for people.
Mhm.
Like I don't. I'm at a point in my life right now where I'm going to be happy at all costs. That's my goal. Whatever it means, whatever it takes, I'm going to be happy, whatever that looks like. And so like it's one of those things where we have these mini apocalypses, which really just revealing things to you. A lot of stuff you don't even want to admit that you're seeing, you
Mhm.
know. And it just kind of it hit me this like I woke up this morning like literally in tears, and because so much stuff is changing, and I don't want it to change. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, in order for me to live my best life and be who I want to be, who's God called me, some things got to change.
Mhm.
Is that's just it in a nutshell.
Mhm.
And again, when you put up boundaries like that, people say, well, well, he's that funny. Well, he's no, 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 no. This is my time. I'm going to live in it.
Mhm.
I do want to bring up Teresa's point though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Follow that.
I loved it. I was going to say, please read it.
Teresa says, don't lay up for yourself toilet paper and frozen goods, for the sewer and electric grids may collapse. And what will all of your hoarding get you? Rather focus on building up community and resilience to survive the coming changes, because we don't know what collapse will look like and what form it will take. But we can pull together
Oof.
and find a way through together.
That is a word.
Don't lay up for yourself toilet tissue and
I
frozen goods. Yes, God.
I'm copying that, Teresa. I'm saving that for later. That's so
we need a
good.
It needs
It
on
needs to be a
Facebook.
t-shirt.
I love it.
Post it on Facebook, Teresa.
I want to do a comment on YouTube that says, "I'm afraid. I understand what you're talking about, but I'm still afraid." And I
Be
think so.
afraid.
Like, yeah, I think fear is a legit response. I mean, and I think that's part of, in Jesus' words, he's talking about there's great consternation, fear, and people fainting. I also think, I mean, speaking as a white cisgender guy, childbirth is terrifying. like being born when like going into that process is terrifying. I think like in Revelation, it's even described as a woman in labor, right? Paul describes all creation groaning in labor. So, um, yeah. Oh, I want to share this. This is also coming from a transgender perspective. I take it. I get the whole making things better as community and death being rebirth and restoring everything, but I'm scared of dying. I'm scared of losing my home and my hormones and everything. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also, I think, important to recognize like there's different levels of fear that everybody experiences. That in the current climate, there's a lot more that there's physical risk for a lot of people. Yeah. Thanks. Paula, you've got your hand up.
Just a couple of short things. I understand thinking of the apocalypse as those times when we go through changes and bad times in our life. I don't think most of those are an apocalypse. I think
Mhm.
that's just life. I mean, it comes with good and bad. There are earth-shaking times in life that don't necessarily change the circumstances around you as much as change who you are at the core of your being.
Mhm.
Now, I would consider that a personal apocalypse.
Mhm.
Second, Tony, what you were saying about legalism, one verse that right-wing evangelicals use a lot to not do anything to make the world a better place is that one where I think it was Paul who said, avoid the very appearance of evil.
Mhm.
And that's their escape clause where they don't have to have anything to do with people who use drugs or with the LGBTQI community. If you avoid the very appearance of evil, you isolate yourself in your own little cocoon of safety and don't get out there into the world and get dirty at all,
Mhm. Yeah.
which I think is a bad translation of the verse.
Well, and it's taking something that's real. I mean, it's not a bad ethical principle to say avoid the appearance of wrongdoing. Like, don't look like you're taking a bribe, for example. That would be, that seems to not be the thing at the top of the list, right? I'm sorry.
No, taking the bride is totally
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, just line the bribes up. The appearance, what appearance of wrongdoing? Anyway, um, go ahead, Miller.
Yeah, don't look like you're sexually abusing a child. Like, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right,
Um,
right,
As long as you don't look like it, you're okay.
right. Mm,
oh,
mhm,
gross. I think, since we brought up the trans experience, I think that like another cool word that you could use for this whole apocalypse thing is transition,
yes, yes. No, I think
which
that's right.
I think that there is it's poetic that
Mhm,
um that people who really want to say that apocalypse is like one thing
mhm,
uh refuse to acknowledge that gender transition or a million other kinds of transitions are possible. you
mhm,
know I think of the moment, like one of my personal apocalypses was realizing that I did not have to take the Bible literally.
mhm.
I think I was reading like an NT Wright book and I was like, wait a minute, there's another way to think about this. Like, because I
Right.
literally was not aware. And uh it was a huge moment for me.
Yeah.
And obviously thinking about like gender is something that society made up, you know?
Well,
Like that's a big apocalypse in my mind. Yeah.
right. So much of that, so much of what's in Revelation and the biblical apocalypses is seeing through the fictions that society
Yeah.
uses to hurt people, like poverty. I mean, poverty is a
Yeah.
fiction. Poverty is manufactured. Similar to, the idea of gender inequality, or the idea of, because you don't fit this binary, you don't fit in the world, right? Well, that describes a lot of things, describes a lot of people. So absolutely. revealing all that's fictional, um, and socially constructed is part of the apocalypse, I think. Yeah. Go ahead,
And
Tony.
our
Oh, sorry. Go
sorry,
ahead. No,
I
go
was
ahead,
gonna say
Miller.
our tendency is to
Hmm.
try to make things simple, try to
Hmm.
simplify the narrative and turn it into binary things. Like I saw somebody talking about gender the other day, and it was like people thought that the sun and the moon were opposites, but in reality, the sky is full of, you know, infinite number, of stars,
Hmm.
and the sun is the same as all of those stars. So,
Yeah.
it's not binary.
Right. Right. Thank you. Go
I,
ahead,
I was
Tony.
I was thinking about using apocalypse as an enlightenment, like
Hmm.
when you like understand things a little bit better. You said something a minute ago that I can't think of what it was right now, but it was so prophetic. Um, um, it escapes me right now, but like when we think about, I mean, even the book Revelation, like it could have been called the Apocalypse, it could have been called the Enlightenment, because it's all about revealing those things that have otherwise gone unnoticed. And then we brought about the manufacturing of poverty. When we first started, I had just submitted a review of a seminar done by Dr. Brewer, who's a doctor at UAB, and
Hmm.
he was talking about how rural churches since 2009, 12 rural church 12 rural hospitals have closed in Alabama.
Hmm. Yeah.
As of 2023, 13 were on the chopping block.
Mhm.
And all of this pretty much could have been fixed by expanding Medicaid.
Yeah.
And again, when we talk about, the religious right and how good they claim that they are, like, not only would these hospitals not have closed, but since you're so pro-life, how many lives could you have saved? How many lives could you have extended?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not about economics. Is not about religion. It's
Hmm.
about them hoarding all of the wealth for themselves and not giving a crap about anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Medicaid, the failure to expand Medicaid
It's a moral failure.
is a moral failure. Absolutely.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mima.
Go ahead, Paula.
Uh, I learn a lot from my children and grandchildren. And yeah, revelation literally means God is revealing something to us, or
Hmm.
revealing the nature of reality, basically. And I think of it as a child's pop-up book. When you're
Hmm.
reading the book, you open it up and you see what looks like is going to be on the page, and you read that, but then you pop it up and it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
And I like that image. And as far as that binary thing, Miller, we teach from the time a child is born, we tend to teach them to think in binaries. Here are the colors: red, black, blue, green. And tall, short. Two choices for everything. I'm so proud of the way my daughter Joanna is raising her children, though. When Rory was 5 or 6, we were out in the yard and this gorgeous redbird landed close to us. And I said, "Oh, isn't she beautiful?" And Rory looked at me and said, "Gran, how do you know it's a she? That bird might be a they or a them."
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Tony, go ahead.
From Teresa, she's got a
Oh,
word
yeah.
for y'all this
She's on a
morning.
roll.
She's on her own. She says, "What's happening is terrifying. Yes, I want to find ways to help, not deny the gravity of what's happening. The connections, the community matter. There are direct parallels to many times in history, and we can learn from it. People are already literally fleeing their homes. There's a mass exodus from red states where persecution is rampant.
Hmm.
We have to be the kingdom and not wait on it.
Yeah. I
Which
appreciate
is,
that.
I have a friend who actually just moved to South Africa. Of all
Mm.
the places I think a black man should move, South Africa was not on my top list of places, but he's moved there. He loves it.
Hmm.
And, we should be ashamed of who we are as a country right now, but we are not, because we have no shame. And I think that's just a very sad commentary. But it's kind of like what President Obama said, like we have to be the change that we see. A lot of times, and I had to get on my mom about this early on in my religious upbringing about, well, we just gonna pray about it. That ain't never helped nobody.
Well,
like getting stuff, getting stuff done. Like we think we just pray and just sit here, and all of a sudden God does all the magic behind the no. You got to get off your butt and do something. And again, back to avoiding the appearance of doing stuff bad. So you absolutely sit there and do nothing. And in this context, even saying you want something good to happen, you still sit there and do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to say, like, what you were talking about, the idea of fleeing, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds because we could have a whole discussion about staying or going and various virtues of either of those things. In the book of Revelation, one of the powerful images is of a pregnant woman who flees the dragon into the woods, right? And and this is a common theme in Israel's history, is Jesus and Joseph and Mary fleeing to Egypt, right, to escape danger. That being in exile and return, that's all part of the biblical narrative. And I think that's part. I don't want to minimize it. I just want to say that's part of the reality of what's revealed, is that sometimes the best resistance is to survive, to get the heck out of Dodge. I want to read a comment from YouTube. I always use the comparison of science. Gravity was always true, but we came to understand it more accurately. I think in reference to the idea of gender and transgender rights. I think Miller, going back to what you said a minute ago, the idea of revealing, of coming to a deeper understanding of someone either coming to understand who they are, or for someone else to come to understand the way the world is. That's a revelation. That's something being revealed. I've shared before, a lot of my perspective on Christianity is shaped by Buddhism, and the Buddha is the one who's awake. He says, someone asks you, what are you, a prophet? Are you something? Are you this? Are you that? He says, I'm awake. And that's what Buddha means, right? I've come to a different state of consciousness where I'm not fooled by some of this stuff.
He's woke.
He's woke. Exactly. That's what Buddha means.
You said it.
That's what Buddha means. So anyway, I think there is something very profound about coming to a place of understanding what's actually going on. That is partially the kingdom. That when you realize you're there, and I think I would say this to Giant Robots Conquer the World on YouTube. I think part of what's revealed also is community, like who you can depend on, and where your places of safety are. So I pray that you've got that in your life. A community that's going to look out for you and make sure you get what you need. So I feel like that's a good place to wrap up. Can we go back to the liturgy?
Yes, sir.
And let me go ahead and pull that up. All right.
Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me and in all your creatures. I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart. For I love you, Lord, and so need to give myself, to surrender myself into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are my Father. Amen.
God is love. Nothing is wasted. All things shall be well. Go in peace.
So thanks to those of you who have tuned in, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or Zoom, glad that you joined in worship with us today. If you, again, if you would, if you've been watching, just click like or leave a comment in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. That gives us a way to count you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. And those of you who